All right, we are studying New Testament exegesis and are talking about the steps of New Testament exegesis, and we are ready to start talking about step number 3. The first step was to think in terms of entire books. And when the point that we were making is reminding ourselves that these books were delivered as a whole unit, and that was the way that they were to be studied and analyzed. Second was to find key words and phrases. 4 ways, the 4 P's, are how you find key words or phrases. What are the 4 P's?
Prevalence, repeated words.
Prevalence. Purpose statement. Prayer. Petition. All right. What is a petition?
It's
petition
the Greek way of underlining or bolding things.
Right. And normally it's translated how, Jack?
Urge, entreat, beseech.
Right. So that's the Greek way of saying, this is important, I'm underlining this, I'm italicizing this. So, prevalence, purpose statement. What's an example of a purpose statement? Jess?
1 Timothy 3:15.
All right, which says virtually what?
I write so that one ought to know how to conduct himself in the church.
Okay, so Paul tells us, 1 Timothy 3:15, this is why I'm writing. Purpose statement. All right, that's going to help me find keywords. Prayers, we were talking about the logic behind that. He's not going to say, when I pray for you, this is what I pray, and then turn right around and ignore the contents of that prayer or the letter. So we're finding keywords. The way that we do that most frequently is by the prevalence, the repetition of a word idea. Okay, so now we found those words. Our next task is to study those words. You've got to do your lexical and your dictionary studies. Thank you. Now, here are some recommended tools that if you wanted to buy some books, Strong's Complete Word Study Concordance is a good tool. The Greek-English Concordance, and also another one that's called the Book Study Concordance of the Greek New Testament. These are all for English speakers. These are all for people that are not experts on Greek and are not ever going to be, but are wanting to get back to the languages of the Bible. Obviously, the first one is the only one that's going to help you with both Old and New Testament. The middle one, the Greek-English Concordance and the Book Study Concordance are New Testament study tools. Now, there are a number of free concordances and lexicons that are online. And I've talked about eSword before, and there are a number of resources that are downloadable, that are for free. So if somebody is not going to purchase something like the Logos Bible software, there's still some tools out there. And if somebody is not going to go the route of internet research, but they want it, they're the hard copy type of person, that's the way they like to study, then here are some tools that I would recommend. All right, these are going to help you in doing this third step, and that is, I've got to study these words. I need to understand the way the inspired writer is using these words. Now, the second one that I recommend, besides the 3 books pictured, is the Logos Bible software. This tool is one that is such a user-friendly Bible study tool, because all you have to do is right-click on that particular word, and it's going to call up all of the books that you have in your library that are going to give you a study of that word. And then you can slowly but surely navigate your way through from some study tools that just give you a brief 2 or 3 sentence definition to a study tool like the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament that's going to do a full-blown study that's going to cover several pages and is going to walk you through the study of that word from Old Testament to intertestamental to New Testament to early church writers. So you've got basically 4 different phases of studying a word in a tool like the Theological Dictionary in the New Testament, what we refer to as pt.12. All right, now those kind of tools are going to be valuable in studying these words. If you don't know what the word means, then you're not going to know what the text says. You don't know what the word means, then you're not going to know what the text is saying. The Bible has a lot of words that are words that are deserving of more than a surface glance at those particular words. All right, so some other tools that are going to give you a deeper, more thorough analysis are the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, frequently known as Kittle, and then the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology, frequently known as Colin Brown. Those are the 2 very best study tools of Greek words that are of some depth. Now you might be saying, well, what happened to BDAG? BDAG does not go into the depth that these books do. But with Logos, you've got these tools available to you. So you right-click on a word, and it tells you, all right, where do you want to go and look at this word? Well, I want to look at it in TD&T. So I click on TD&T, and it automatically turns me to the exact spot in TD&T where that word is studied. And if I had my hard copy of TD&T and I don't know Greek, I'm going to have to go to the index, look up the English words, find what looks like the Greek word, find the page, and then go pull the right volume off the shelf. And with Logos, it's just like that. You right-click, I want to find it in TD&T, boom, you're there. And so just like that, you've got your page turned there. And you also have the advantage of saying, well, I really would like to have both Colin Brown and TD&T and BDAG all open at the same time. Well, you can do that with the Logos Bible software. You've got all of those books, if you will, with the pages turned to the exact spot in studying that particular word. So,
is the little TD&T, is it Greek-based as well?
yeah.
Is Strong's itself actually on Logos Bible software?
I do not believe Strong's is. It is?
Yeah.
Is it an add-on?
Because when I tried doing this for our assignment last night, I didn't have to pull up Strong's. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing, which is probably the case.
Ministry text next.
Well, yeah, that's a given, but...
Truly, clearly, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Michael would be able to answer whether it's something that is purchasable.
Okay.
But I don't have it on mine. I know that. Okay, so I'm looking at a word. Now I've already done my lexical and my dictionary study, so I've got a relatively good feel for what that word means. Now I want to consider other uses of this word in Scripture, but especially in the book that I'm studying. There are some words that are used in various places in the Bible that you want to do kind of a generic word study, like what does propitiation mean? What does atonement mean? You've got these Bible words that have theological significance that are used by various inspired writers. Jesus said, I came to give myself as a ransom. Well, what's that all about? All right, so sometimes you're going to study a word globally, and make sure you're hearing me out on this. That's not the best way to study a word. The best way to study a word is within the context of the book that you are studying. And the reason why, and here's a newsflash, words do not mean the same thing from book to book. They don't mean the same thing from book to book. Like what? Let's talk about the word righteousness. Now, one of the rebuttals I get to this point is, but we're not talking about the same Greek word. But we most certainly are talking about the same Greek word. Dikaiosune is the same word. In Romans, dikaiosune has to do with something that God does to man or for man. But it's an act or an action of God. Now, this happens to be one of the key words in the book of Romans, one of the more frequently occurring words in the book of Romans. And so, we need to understand what this word means. In its various forms, it occurs 77 times in Romans. So you need to get this word. You need to understand what Paul is doing with this word. And most of the time, he's talking about an act of God. But in Matthew, it's not referring to something that God does, but referring to something that man does. Jesus says, beware of practicing your righteousness before men, to be seen of them. So, you cannot say, well, righteousness means this, and try to force that definition into Romans and into Matthew. But it's the same word. Yeah, but it doesn't have the same meaning. And that's why you've got to study words within the context of the books in which you're studying. Because typically, Bible writers do not change meanings from book to book. Typically. There are a few exceptions, but when Paul uses the word righteousness in Romans, he's generally meaning it one way. Yeah.
Does this still go into your list of possible meanings when you're coming up with the list of?
Always.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just making sure.
Yeah, and then when you're actually studying the text,
cut them out as you
start eliminating. Right. Yeah. Well,
Would this also be, I guess, an example? You said each word should be translated the exact same. So this would need to be translated righteousness, but this would be where somebody else might, whenever they're trying to tell us what it means, mess it up. I'm just trying to figure out the example from what you guys were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah, it's possible that.
But the word is the same.
The word is the same.
Okay.
And
Okay.
whether you translate it righteousness or you translate it justification,
Okay.
but like the NAS goes back and forth
Okay.
between both of them.
Okay.
You don't know the tongue of the same word. Another example is the word works. Ergon is the Greek word. So we're not talking about a different Greek word. But in Romans, it refers to works done to earn or merit salvation. So Paul is doing something special with this word and using it to describe a person that, like the Jews of old, it felt like their ticket to eternity was by law keeping. Well, that's what Paul means by works in the book of Romans. But in James, it refers to works done that demonstrate the existence of faith. Now I've got a number 1 with Romans. You see that? Right there? Now watch what happens when I blow it up. Explain to me why that happens.
Ross Sinclair wants to go get Wayne Nelson to see what's going on. He's getting all freaked out over there.
Good job, Sinclair. Good job. Good job.
That is
All right,
awesome.
so in Romans, the majority of times that Paul refers to works, it's a bad thing. In James, it's a good thing. Well, Martin Luther never understood that. Never saw that the inspired writers were using the same word, but with a different application and meaning of those words. This is why studying words from, cross-studying from book to book is never a good exegetical practice. It's not. So when you're studying these important words, then remind yourself, I'm going to study these words in the book that I'm studying. Yes.
Would it be okay to say you're going to study it, or would this be dangerous too, within the same writer? I mean, if I'm looking at it, John, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, or in Paul's writings as a whole, is that still a little dangerous, or they're going to be pretty consistent in how they use it?
They're going to be consistent on how they use it.
Okay.
So that's a good move. If you're studying a word in John, go look at 1st and 2nd and 3rd John.
I remember when we were doing Matthew, and you talked about some phrases he uses demonstrate a double fulfillment, and some were just, and then you see those, and I remember seeing those words in the other Gospels, and they didn't seem to have, so that is just a Matthew phrase as well.
Yeah. And so we can see how, if you're taking that interpretation and applying it to Luke, you're gonna get off track.
Right.
It's a good illustration. All right. So after you've done A and B, now C, you're going to consider the word in the context in which it is found. All right, some examples. In the Gospel of John, one of the key words is the word cosmos. 77 times cosmos occurs in the Gospel of John.
How many times did you say?
77.
77.
All right, so when you're looking, you studied those 77 times, and you're looking at a passage like 110 that has the word cosmos 3 times. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, and the world did not know him. All right, so what is John doing with the word cosmos? Now, if we just did a surface study of the word, we would say it's the planet. Or we might say, well, it's actually more than that. It's humanity, the world of people. But you know what? You still wouldn't be right. Because when you're studying the word cosmos in the Gospel of John, you'll find that he does use it in those ways, but most of the time, cosmos in the Gospel of John means those people who have rejected God. He's not talking about all of humanity as much as he is those people that don't know their Creator. Now, there were some that did, but there were a lot that didn't. So you think, well, that's pretty interesting. So John is using the word cosmos to refer to those who have rejected God, that do not know God. All right? Now, knowing that, what are you going to do with John 3:16? For God so loved the world.
Mm-hmm.
Does he mean all humanity there? Or is John trying to say that God loved the unlovable? God loved those that didn't know him and didn't care about him? Well, that could very well be the point that he's trying to make, which is a little bit different than just a blanket statement of saying God loved everybody and he sent Jesus. Now, theologically, what's wrong with it? Nothing. That's not the point. The point is, what is John 3:16 actually teaching when it says God so loved the cosmos? What does he mean there? Well, how is he using the word in his book? We've already done our study, and we're seeing that out of the 77 times, he's using the word world to refer to a particular group of people within all of humanity.
Does he do that consistently through the book?
He does.
So it's the same meaning throughout the book?
No, I mean, like even in 110, when it says that he made the world, it's not saying he made the wicked people.
Right.
He's just talking about, he made everything in creation. So you just gotta look at the context. Knowing though that John does most of the time use the word cosmos to refer to rebellious people, that's an important point to remember. What about the word law in Romans? Like in Romans 6:14, we are not under law. Well, the temptation might be to do what some of those in the new hermeneutic camp have done, and that is they use Romans 6:14 as their champion text to talk against patternism. That there is no pattern, there is no law. There wasn't a law in the Old Testament, but there's not a law in the New. Therefore, to say that you can't have women preachers or you can't have Thursday night communion is foreign to the New Testament. The New Testament, we're not under law. And when you're saying you can't do this and you have to do that, then you're speaking like the new covenant is a law, and it's not. Romans 6:14 says we're not under law. Problem? They haven't done exegetical work. What is Paul doing with the word law in the book of Romans? Well, we would see that the word law is akin to the word works, and that law represents a system by which one is justified, either by law keeping or by grace. There's only two options. So Paul's saying we're not under law, but under grace. Everybody's going to be under one of those two systems of justification.
What did you say it usually refers to? Law?
It refers to a system of justification, a means by which one can be saved. That's where works, the works of law kind of flow together. Well, it's very helpful knowing that that's what Paul's doing. And, the word nomos, you look it up and it says nomos, law. Okay, great. I know what the word means. Well, no, you don't. You've got a surface definition of the word, but unless you've studied the word in the context of the book, and you're going, oh man, Paul was doing something with this word that I need to understand, because that's going to impact the way I interpret that verse, just like Romans 6:14 is so frequently misinterpreted. You don't know what Paul's doing with the word. All right, what about the word sign in John 20:30 and 31? Many other signs Jesus performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these signs have been written. Well, if your experience has been like mine, 99.9% of commentators will tell you that you might as well take the word sign and write miracle above it, because that's what the word means. Many other miracles that Jesus performed in the presence of his disciples. All right, that's all well and good until you look at chapter 2 and verse 18, when Jesus cleanses the temple, and what he's doing is referred to as a sign. There was no miracle that was done, but the action of Jesus in driving out the money changers was a sign. So now, by studying the Word, you've seen, well, I can't make this arbitrary definition and wherever the word sign occurs, put a line through it and write miracle above it, because that's not the case. What John is doing is, and I love to do this. All right, so if it means miracle, why didn't he use the word miracle? I mean, why kind of muddy the waters? Well, I really meant miracle. Well, say that. That's what you mean. But he used the word sign because he's trying to say, look beyond the event. Whether it's a miracle, whether it's a cleansing of the temple, look beyond that. What is the message that is trying to be relayed when Jesus gives sight to a blind man, when Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, when Jesus cleanses the temple. What does the sign say? Now you're getting it. Now you're seeing what John's doing and why he uses the word sign as opposed to the word miracle. All right, so we've talked about do your lexical dictionary studies, consider other uses of this word in Scripture, but especially in the book. Consider the word in the context it's found. And then point D. If not studying Greek, use several good English translations, especially those which tend to be more literal. Yes.
It's funny, when we were doing this word study, obviously we have awesome technology now, and with Logos, we have all these tools at our fingertips. I can only imagine how long something like this would take back in the day. I know we have a benefit from that standpoint, but does technology necessarily mean that we have a better chance of understanding?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the old way, you had more of a tendency to miss things.
Okay.
Whereas with the new way, and I may be letting the cat out of the bag with Logos 5, but there's a new feature that none of the previous versions of Logos had, and that has to do with a root search. Michael used to spend almost an entire class period teaching how to put all of the roots in a search field and then asking it to find all of those. Now, all it is just a click of a button. You say, I'm looking for the root, like, all right, love. You've got the noun, you've got the adjective, you've got the verb. And I want to find all of those in 1 John. Well, you had to go through the steps of typing in each one of those into the search field. Now, you just say root, colon, and then you start typing AGA, and it says you want the root of, and it doesn't matter, agape or agapao, doesn't matter. It's going to call all of them up, just like that. And I mean, you may have to wait as long as 2 or 3 seconds.
At one time?
To generate that report. So that's one of the absolutely coolest features in Logos 5, because for what we're doing here, in trying to merge exegetical work with the Bible software, it was already fast. But you still, doing the root searches were a pain. Not anymore.
Did you have more of a sense of accomplishment back when you flipped through 40 books?
I did.
I mean, really?
And, I said weeks. It took me weeks in order to generate this information that now we generate in 2.3 seconds.
That's cool. That's cool.
What happens to us who just bought Logos 4?
You can upgrade.
You can upgrade.
Is it a big fee?
I'm not quite sure.
What do you have? Do you have silver?
Is it
No, but depends on your
level?
But I looked for the upgrade for platinum.
$1,500. How much is it if you just bought it then?
Might to wait yet,
Don't do it yet.
because they'll do some specialty type of trade-off opportunity.
Well, Nathan would like to do that for everybody, just by the way.
That's
That's
what I
his,
think I
his
heard
senior
about
gift. 1,500 for the upgrade.
What was Mark saying?
He's saying that with the level that he's got, platinum, it's $1,500 to go to Logos 5.
for the upgrade.
Right. But the weight on that, don't anybody pull the trigger on that yet, because there's really two things that are going on. One is there's a simple conversion where you've got basically the benefits of Logos 5, but you're kind of staying at the same level that you're at now. And that conversion is like $125.
And that's available now or later?
It's available now. But, see, we talk about translations and there's money behind all these things. Logos, they're in the same boat. They've got to figure out new ways to get into your billfolds, and so they're coming up with Logos 5, and they're wanting you to upgrade and buy some more books and stuff like that, which, granted, for some of the new features of Logos 5, I get paying some money for that, because whoever did all the work in generating like these root searches, that takes a lot of manpower to come up with that information. But anyway, it's something that if I'm understanding what Michael has said, that we can get the upgrade at kind of a minimal price, and plus what Mark is referring to as well is, we have a special deal with Logos with 50% off, as most of you, if not all of you, purchase your Logos for half price, and we're hoping that the upgrades will also be something greatly discounted for us as well. So we'll see, but he's working like a mad dog, getting ready for next quarter, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to teach Logos 4 when Logos 5 is now the thing that everybody needs to really be familiar with. So I'm sure there'll be an announcement from Michael on what we're going to do about all that. Somebody else? Question, comment? All right, several good English translations. All right, we've been talking about this long enough that you should be able to rattle off what those are. What are they?
New American Standard.
New American Standard.
New King James.
New King James.
RSV.
RSV.
ESV.
ESV.
Oh, that one's negotiable.
King James. What's the most literal English translation?
RSV.
ASV.
Oh, ASV.
So those six are the ones that, if you're going to do word studies, and you're going to do a majority of your work, focus on those six English translations. Why? Because they tend to be more literal.
What is NASU?
That's the update, the 95 update.
Cool.
So where does the 77 version of NASB fall in this list? Same place?
It's still there.
It's in the top 77.
The update, I think, made some improvements in some of the word choices, but as far as still being a good exegetical tool, they still good. Maybe even a little bit better. But. All right, so what we're talking about with English translations is doing our best to get back to understanding what the inspired writer is saying and what he's trying to communicate with these words. That's exegesis. Now, I got a little cartoon to show you. This is typically what we think we're supposed to do. Home Bible study in 75 AD. All right? I think what Paul wants us to do is say what the verse means to you. Well, that's kind of where we are, not in 75 AD, but in the 21st century. What does it mean to you? Well, in exegesis, we're doing our dead level best to avoid that, because I need to know what it means, not how it hits me, where I can sort of interpret what the verse is saying based upon the way I'm reading it. What is the inspired writer saying? More accurately, what is God saying to us? Not to me and to you, but to us, because the message is the same. All right, step number 4 is putting those keywords into action. We found them, we've studied them, and now we are going to let those words come alive in the text that we're studying. This means to find out how that word functions in the book that you're studying. Now, the assignment that was due today was trials. The word trials in the book of James. Now we are talking about what you just did. Putting these words into action. How does the word trial function within the text of the book of James? How many times does the word occur in that text? All right, we're asking the question, why study the word, and what could this word mean, the semantic range of the word? Well, that's putting the word into action. And what am I getting from the word trial, and how is the inspired writer using that word? And then, if I'm going to be teaching chapter 5 in Sunday morning Bible class, or I wanted to preach a sermon, how many times does this word occur in my pericope? You can know that. It's a key word for the book. We've already established that. But if the key word for the book is not found in my pericope, what does that mean exactly? Is he pretty much done talking about trials? Or if it does occur, maybe it occurs a lot. Well, what does that mean? How should I then look at this section if he's hammering in this pericope the word trial? So we're finding out those questions. All right, how do those relate to each other? right, so I've got the one word, trial, but how does that relate to other key words that I'm finding in my pericope? All right, so I'm studying James, and I see other key words like faith. I see key words like work. And so now, in my pericope, I've got trials, and I've got faith, and I've got work. Well, how do they relate to each other? Right question to ask. A question that I get asked a lot is, what do you do with a paragraph, a pericope, that has no keywords or virtually few keywords? Now, unless you have turned your Bibles into an exegetical study Bible, you're not ever even going to know that it doesn't have any keywords or has relatively few. You're not ever going to see it. But I guarantee you, if you've got your Bible marked up, it's going to leap off the page. Said, what's up with this? I'm looking at 7, 8, 9 verses, and it's got one of the 20 key words for the book in it? Or 2? Well, typically, that's going to be an illustration. Now, I'm giving myself a little bit of a disclaimer because there might be some place in some remote passage that I'm not thinking about that's not an illustration, but I'm tempted to say it is an illustration. But there, like I say, there might be some remote passage that I'm not thinking of that is not an illustration, it's something else. So I don't even know what that something else might be. But, well, it's good to know. This is not a main point. It doesn't have any keywords in it. It's just an illustration. All right, so what's it illustrating? Oh, okay. Good question. It's illustrating this. All right, now I've got something. So when you're going through these books and you find these keyword black holes, then what does that mean? We're flowing along, we've got all these keywords, and all of a sudden there's nothing there. It's an illustration. An illustration of the point to come or the point just made. Now, putting those key words into action, let's talk some illustrations so that you can see more clearly what I'm talking about. One of the key words in 1 Peter is the word behavior. Anastrophe is the Greek word. It occurs 7 times in 1 Peter. All right, so suppose that the text that I want to preach on or I want to teach is chapter 1, 13 through 21. Now, according to my Bible, that's where you've got the paragraph divisions. Is that pretty much what all of you have? All right, so, you know, they're telling us that this is probably a pericope from 13 to 21. Why, if you remember our discussion in Old Testament exegesis, what makes you think that 13 is a good place to begin a new paragraph? Therefore, based on what we talked about in 1 through 12, now let's move on and talk application. Well, so I'm going to be teaching 13 through 21. How many times does the word occur in my pericope? I'm going, wow, that's kind of interesting. 3 times. Does the word anastrophe occur in 1 Peter 1, 13 through 21? Now, this is one of my favorite illustrations, and I'm slamming the New American Standard here because I think that they did us a great disservice. Because the word anastrophe is translated behavior in verse 15, conduct, verse 17, way of life, 18. Now, who's got New King James? Dale, read just 15 through 18.
But as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, because it is written, Be holy, for I am holy. And if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, conduct yourselves throughout the time of your stay here in fear, knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold from your aimless conduct, received by tradition from your fathers.
Okay, did you hear that? Conduct every single time in the New King James. New American Standard, behavior, conduct, way of life. Same Greek word. So, props to New King James. They did us a good exegetical deed there and translated it the same way. Now, because it kept saying conduct, were you just bored out of your mind?
Terrible.
With that endless repetition. I think the whole point is silly that you need to spice up a translation with variety of, interpreting or translating words. But with the New King James, I'm seeing a flow here and repetition of the word conduct. All right, so the answer then is that it occurs 3 times in my pericope. Now the next question, what other key concepts are found around this? Anybody see another word or so that looked like it occurred frequently in this text?
Holy.
Yeah, the word holy. Look at verse 15. But like the Holy One who called you, that's 1. Be holy yourselves, that's 2. Verse 16, because it is written, you shall be holy, that's 3, for I am holy. Okay? Well, so what are you seeing then? There's a comparison between what 2 words? Huh?
Holy and conduct.
Holy and conduct. That's just by looking at the words. And so if you want to say, well, what Peter is trying to get across, especially in this first chapter, is how you are going to act. And the way that you need to act is as holy people. Yeah, I know that you're going through a tough time. I know that you're going through severe persecution, which he already said that in the earlier verses. They're going through, according to verse 6, various trials. But you need to be holy. There's no excuse. It doesn't matter how bad it is. There's no excuse for not living holy. God doesn't say be holy as I am holy, unless you're being persecuted, and then you're still expected to be holy, no matter how bad it is. Okay? Now we're getting somewhere. There in 1 Peter. We've studied the words. We understand what holy means. We're seeing that it's a predominant word along with the word behavior. Now we're seeing how those words merge together in the key concepts around conduct. So what level of importance would you put this pericope in comparison with the whole book? Now, in some ways that's kind of a fair question, but unfair question. But what would you say, just on a scale of 1 to 10, would you say that this is a 1 in importance or a 10 of importance? Based on keywords.
Pretty important if it occurs 3 times in this one section and 7 overall for the whole book.
It's screaming at us. It's screaming at, this is important. If you don't get this, then the other 5 chapters are probably going to be a crash and burn. You've got to get the relationship between holiness and behavior in this. So it's a key section. If you've got the word holy occurring 4 times and the word conduct occurring 3 times in, 8 verses? Wow, that's power packed. This is loaded here. And there are other key words here as well that would further solidify the point that we're making, but just those 2 words by themselves tell us this is not just an illustration or a sub-point. This is a major point in the book.
How many times does holy occur in 1 Peter?
11 times. All right, so what does this word have to do with the theme of 1 Peter? Just told you. Well, what would you say about that?
Seems to me like it may be the theme of the book.
Which is what? How would you just sort of summarize?
Act holy. Conduct your behavior in a holy manner.
Despite what?
Persecution. Whatever happened.
Yeah. Persecution, because another one of the key words, and it doesn't occur in this pericope, but it's one of the predominant ideas that's going to run through the book, is that word trial. 16 times does the word trial occur. So, all right, the Roman soldiers are knocking on your door, and they're putting you on the rack, or you are being publicly humiliated and slandered and laughed at. How are you going to act? How are you going to respond? Hopefully, HOLY describes the way that you act. That's 1 Peter. And all these other key words that occur in the book are all going to be perfectly tied into that idea. Like what? Glory. You want glory? You better be holy. Because if you're not living holy in the midst of persecution, there's not going to be any glory. Hope, grace, those other words, faith, you can see how they all tie in to the idea of what are you doing when the going gets tough. How are you acting when things get really severe? As a person of faith, you're going to have glory. You're going to have grace. You have hope. You're bailing. You're saying Lord Caesar instead of Lord Christ. You have no faith. You have no glory. You have no hope. Okay, that's 1 Peter. But you got it. And all we've done is we've put these words in action. We said, here's a book. Now we've got these key ideas. There are threads that run from chapter 1 through chapter 5. And now, what that's going to do for you, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but what that's going to do for you is this. When you come up to particular verses that in and of themselves seem really tough to understand, you're just not going to have that much of a problem. Because you understand the context, the greater context of the book, and what he's really trying to say. And so this one little, wow, what does he mean by that statement? The spirits in prison statement in chapter 3. What's that all about? Well, if you are understanding the book about persecution, staying holy, keeping your behavior holy in the midst of persecution, now you can see that spirits in prison thing doesn't have key words, so it's going to be an illustration. And so what's it illustrating? Okay, now I can do something with that. I can say, this is an illustration trying to make this particular point. Okay, so I get that. All right. How would you identify the theological importance of this word? What's Peter trying to say with this word? All right. You go to a typical church and you tell somebody, take time to be holy. What are they thinking? Well, they're thinking you need to not say any bad words, and you need to walk with your head slightly bowed and your hand folded. Is that what Peter means by the word holy? He's talking about behavior, conduct. Chapter 2, verse 12. Keep your behavior, your anastrophe, excellent among the Gentiles. All right, so he's not talking about walking around with your hands folded, but a lifestyle that is manifesting purity and holiness and godliness in all aspects. Okay, we'll pick up there after this chapter.
Yeah. You want to pray?